I think it's testament to the dynamic fabric of the Mamaroneck-Lachmont communities that those who can help those who can't shoulder the cost of college. The Mamaroneck-Lachmont Student Aid Fund, an entirely private organization, awards scholarships to local high school graduates who qualify for but can't afford to pay for college on their own. My guest today is 19-year Mamaroneck resident Alice Tenney, president of the Mamaroneck-Lachmont Student Aid Fund. Alice has served on the boards of the PTAs at Mamaroneck Avenue, Homix and MHS, and the PT Council. She served on the Student Aid Fund board for 7 years. Alice and her husband have 2 daughters who went through the Mamaroneck schools. The family are compelled by this community's diversity and were drawn to Mamaroneck for just that reason. Stay right where you are, and together we'll learn more about the work of the Mamaroneck-Lachmont Student Aid Fund. I'm Alice Bloom. This is A Town and Village 2. Welcome back. Alice, thanks so much for being my guest. Now, after living in Mamaroneck for almost 30 years, I know very little about the Student Aid Fund. What's the mission of the fund?
The mission of the fund is to enable our high school students in the community to be able to attend college. It's as simple as that.
Do you find that people are surprised to know that there are people here who need some help?
I would say there are. There's a portion of the community that most people know needs help, but there's an enormous portion of the community that most people don't necessarily think of as needing aid for college. But with the cost of college over $50,000 a year at many private schools, there's a large number of people who could use some help.
Now, does the fund say, well, I mean, private schools are $50,000, and someone might be able to afford a state school, which is significantly less. It's not insignificant, but it's much less than that. Does it ever take the tact of, look, you could afford the state university, so go there?
Yes and no. We're not in the practice of advising our students as to where they should apply or where they should attend. That's the job of the student's family and the job of the guidance department, with which we work quite closely at Mamaroneck High School, including the financial aid advisor, Marcia Burkett. However, what we've learned over the years is while it may look like a state college is going to be more affordable than a private college, in many cases that's not the case, for the simple reason that private colleges are able to give out more financial aid than the state ones. So although it may seem that a student would be better off going to a New York State school, one of the SUNYs, when you actually put the dollars down on paper, sometimes they're better off at a private college.
I see. It just seemed like a logical question to me, and I wondered if you got involved in that kind of decision-making or
we don't.
Or judgment, I guess.
We don't. We try to keep as many judgments out of our process and make it not necessarily formulaic, but we try to put everybody on an even playing field, and we do not get in the advising program at all.
When did the fund start?
We started actually in 1937.
No kidding.
Yeah, I mean, most people don't know that the fund is as old as it is. We're celebrating, I think it's our 76th year, if my math is correct. Yeah, we have been around for a long, long time, but we tend to be a little quieter than some of the other local organizations, and many people aren't aware that we've been around for this long.
Well, I think there is some confusion. Mamaroneck also has a foundation. Yes, that's the Mamaroneck Schools Foundation. Okay. Which hasn't been around since 1937. I don't know how long they have. Their mission is a bit different. It's yet another way of making education central in our community, but what the Schools Foundation does is supplement the program that's already in effect for the students in the school system now, kindergarten through 12th grade. What we do is help prepare students for beyond the 12th grade as they're moving into what we hope is higher education and into the rest of their life.
I think it's also a little different. Does the foundation give money directly to students?
No. The foundation gives money according to grants. They grant money through grant requests that they've received, usually, I believe, from teachers and staff in the community. What we do is very different. while we don't literally hand the student a check, we do literally send a check to the student's institution to pay for that student's college education.
Okay, so the student never receives the money directly?
No.
Okay. And so it'll go to the school once that's established that that's the school he's going to. What happens if a student decides not to go?
Then the money is not
gone.
given out.
Oh.
The student our scholarships are good for 2 years, or they're 2-year scholarships, and we make them available for 2 years out of 3. So should the student need to take a semester off, or if he or she's taking a gap year, or needs to take a whole year off, the money isn't lost. They have 3 years to use it.
Okay, and what's the maximum amount of the scholarship?
Every year is different. The amount of money that we can give out is dependent on the amount of money we give in. All we do basically is collect money and give it out. So that's a function of what the need is in a given year and how much we have to give. In some years, we've been able to grant as much as $6,500 per year per
student?
Not per all students, according to their need. It's a sliding scale. Recently, because our fundraising hasn't been as high and yet our need has been much higher, our maximum award has been closer to $4,000 or $4,500.
That's per year for 2
Per
years?
year for 2 years. But again, on a sliding scale. The students who are less needy receive less than that. The ones who are the most needy receive the full amount.
And the money goes towards tuition, or can it go towards room and board as well?
It can go towards any college expense. What's interesting is if you actually go on the website of any college, they will give you an estimated cost of attendance for the school. And what that cost of attendance consists of is, of course, the tuition, the room and board, assuming that it's not a commuter school. It also includes estimated costs for books, for transportation to get to school and back, and some just extra spending money, probably to do things like laundry. So our money can be used for any of that, but we make the check out to the institution. The institution sort of deposits it in the student's account, and it can be used for any of those reasons that I just mentioned.
Do you find that most of the students who receive an award from the fund also receive financial aid from the school?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say most. I don't have a specific number, but I would say definitely more often than not. They also have a financial aid package from the school. What we do at the Student Aid Fund when we're calculating a student's need is we ignore a large portion of what a lot of financial aid packages consist of, and those are work-study programs and loans. We look at only outright grants, scholarships, awards, money that never has to be repaid. So much of what you will see in a financial aid package for most students is going to consist of some outright scholarship award, but it will also consist of work-study programs and loans. When we give money, it's not a loan, it's never to be repaid. And when we calculate what the student's need is, we ignore work-study money and we ignore loans.
Okay. I know that some students are compromised, or the whole application for financial aid is a very complicated process. And there's some challenge to students whose families happen to own a home or have some assets, not enough that they don't need help in paying this enormous bill, but they are compromised because of having some things. Do you use the same formula for deciding on financial aid as schools do?
We do and we don't. We certainly start from the same place they do, which is a federal form called the FAFSA. And every student who is applying for financial aid from a college, let alone from us, needs to fill out that form. So we start with that as well, and we look at that the same way the school does. The government has its own formula for how they come up with what a student is able to afford at any college. We start at that point. We sometimes, if we know there are other circumstances going on within the family, we factor that in as well. It may seem from a student's federal form that he is able to afford the full ride of college. But we may know, for example, that perhaps one of the parents has lost a job recently and has no projected income for the next year. Perhaps there's been an enormous medical expense that the family has had to put on credit cards or take loans out for, or any of those extra factors that could figure in. But we do start from the same point that the college does.
When does the application process start?
Our applications are due at the end of March, the last day of school in March.
So they would be juniors who were applying?
No, they're seniors.
They're the seniors who are applying?
Yes.
Oh, because they would be hearing from colleges
Yes.
just about now.
Yes, most of them have, and in fact that's what we're looking at. We're looking at their financial aid package from whichever college it is that they've applied to. That's exactly what we're looking for. That's the only way we can figure out what the need is. We need to look at what the overall cost is and what the student is able to afford, plus all of the financial aid that he or she has been offered. And then we find a gap between the two, and that's where we fill. That's the number that we fill between the need and the ability.
Challenging. How much money did you give out last year?
Last year we gave out over $250,000.
So all of that was raised from this community, from the Mamaroneck Lachmont
Yes.
community in 1 year?
Probably 90% of it. We also have a substantial endowment. So some of our income that we use to give away every year is income from and appreciation from those endowed funds. But primarily, what we're giving away is what we've collected in a given year, yes.
So how do you solicit this money?
In the fall, we send out a letter to everybody in the school district who has a child in the school district, as well as past donors. We keep names on the list for roughly 5 years. And we send out our main mailing then. In the winter, what we do is a follow-up, sort of what we call an oops letter, to those donors who have given substantially in the past 5 years, but for whatever reason seem to have forgotten us. So we give them a friendly reminder. And then often towards the end of our fiscal year, and our fiscal year ends April 30th, what we do is a personal appeal. Board members will talk to some of their friends, their relatives, other people they know in the community, perhaps to reach a little bit deeper to be able to bring our fundraising total up. And this year we happen to be extremely fortunate in that a community member has offered a $10,000 matching grant to us for every new donor that we bring in up until April 30th.
It's April 30th, 2013.
2013.
So if you give $100, actually the fund will get $200.
That's right, absolutely.
Up to $10,000.
Yes.
So you'll actually be raising $20,000, hopefully.
Yes, that's
correct.
the goal.
So you've got to bring in $10,000 from donations, individual donations. Is there a maximum or minimum on what someone can donate?
Absolutely not.
So if somebody can give $5,
Absolutely.
That's fine. And if you can give $5,000, that would be great too.
If you'd like to put some more zeros on it, that would be fine with us as well.
Now, how about corporate donations? Are you in any way not permitted to take those?
We are permitted to take them. We've found over the years that it's a little bit trickier than it sounds to get them, primarily because most corporations who want to get involved in this kind of work and recognize the importance of educating our students, they want their own name on the scholarship. So let's pretend it's IBM. They want it to be the IBM scholarship. They don't want to give money to the Mamaroneck Student Aid Fund to give out. So that's the reason it hasn't worked as well as perhaps we thought it might have.
Well, I know when NPR does its fundraising, they often say, please ask your company if they have a matching program.
Yes.
So that it'll double.
Yes,
or
we do get some matching grants, absolutely. That does happen from some of our donors who have corporate partners like that.
Now, one of the questions we all have learned to ask before we give donations, so what are the administrative costs involved? How much of that money is really going to the students and how much is going to administer the fund?
I would say 96%, and that's a very rough estimate of what we bring in. It goes right out the door. We have absolutely no staff. There are no paid staff. Our board of directors consists of 17 community members. We are all volunteers. We all care passionately about our community and about educating our youth and giving back. To keep our community the way it is, and we see the value in investing in our students. We have no overhead beyond our fundraising costs, which would be mailings. So that's printed material and postage.
Does the fund have an office that you maintain?
We do not have an office.
So your office is your kitchen?
You've got it.
Or living room or
Yes.
whatever. So it's a not-for-profit.
Yes.
And unless the tax laws have changed significantly recently, is a donation completely tax deductible?
100%.
Okay, I mean, we don't know what lies ahead, certainly, in new tax laws, but
Correct.
for now.
But as of today, we are a 501c3.
Okay. Let's talk a little more about the students and the colleges that they choose. May they go to a 2-year college? If that's-
Absolutely. Many of our students, in fact, do go to Westchester Community College. That's obviously the most popular one around
the most
here.
convenient here.
Yes, absolutely. And our hope is always that they will continue beyond that 2 years and go on and get their bachelor's in another institution. But even if they don't, they've gotten an associate's degree, which they might not have been able to do were we not there to help them.
Do you have contact with students after they've graduated from college or once they're in the college process? I mean, once they're actually at school?
Right, right. To some degree, yes. Certainly while they're at school, we do, because they're telling us that they're going to be eligible for a second year of a scholarship and they need to send us proof that they're enrolled. And again, some more financial aid data, but nothing like the application process the first year. So yes, we do have some communication with them. We've had communication with graduates from all years. We got, this year was really wonderful. We got a donation from a woman who included a handwritten note, and if I may read, what
Sure.
she wrote to us was, she said she was a graduate from the class of 1950, and she said, "I will never forget the thrill of being awarded a student aid gift." And then she went on in her letter to talk about all her relatives who had gone through the school system. I believe some of them had worked at Mamaroneck High School. It was really quite touching. So, and that's not unusual. I mean, maybe the class of 1950 is going back a little far, but yes, we do hear from plenty of our alumni. And in fact, at our awards ceremony, which we have annually in June, our speakers over the past few years have actually been former Mamaroneck Student Aid Fund recipients.
Former graduates of the high
yes,
school.
Yes, absolutely.
Now that's very interesting that you have an awards ceremony. Many awards are confidential, quiet, and in this case, does anybody request confidentiality, or is everyone
We've not
happy?
found that. We don't, when we're giving out the awards, we don't specify the dollar amount. The student knows what the dollar amount is, but nobody sitting in the audience knows. They all get a certificate. On the certificate, it does not say a dollar amount. We've told them a dollar amount via a private letter.
But they're proud to be a recipient of a scholarship,
absolutely.
and they're not, in any way compromised by accepting or feel that they don't want the community to know.
I have not found that yet, and it's really it's a lovely ceremony. I think what's nice about it is it comes a few weeks before high school graduation, and it's much smaller and more intimate. We really get a chance to see each of the students. There are it's been up to 53 students sitting up on the stage at the Pace Auditorium. Every student is recognized. It's a much more intimate environment than what is a lovely graduation ceremony.
Certainly, but you have several hundred students and then their
Exactly.
families and what
Right.
have you.
This is much more personal.
Do you find that students who receive a scholarship are in need of additional assistance in acclimating to college?
When you ask acclimating, do you mean financially, socially?
Oh, in any way. I mean, those of us who've had students in college know that the kids who are graduates of MHS are usually educationally prepared
Yes.
for the workload, but there are social adjustments and financial adjustments, and for many students who've never lived away from home, there are some challenges there. The roommates and just
Absolutely.
living with situations that you've never encountered before. So there are changes, and some kids get derailed and some need a little bit of a hand up. I just wondered if the fund gets involved in any outreach to students to be sure they stay on track.
No, we
or
don't.
help.
We don't. I wouldn't say our job, but our contact and our to some degree, our mission ends when we hand the check over to the school. We certainly hope that the student is getting as much support as he or she needs from the school itself, from his or her family, from whatever sources. And I certainly recognize that going away to college is not an easy prospect for many, many students, but we're not experts in that, so we don't want to try to get too involved.
Now, how involved are the alumni with present recipients? Do you pull them back to motivate or in any way mentor?
We don't do
students?
that. We're not involved in a mentoring program, but I think that by having the speaker at our awards ceremony be a former recipient, former Mamaroneck High School graduate, I think that says a lot to the kids, and I think that's a nice, personal message at the ceremony that this is an important moment in your life, and look what you can make of it. We've had some incredibly impressive alumni speak, and certainly, I mean, we found them inspirational. We certainly hope the students did as well.
Well, I was looking at the website, and actually there was a YouTube video. I guess everything goes on YouTube
Yes.
these days, right? By a young woman who's now a law student at Georgetown, if I
Yes,
remember?
Emerald.
Okay.
Emerald Brudy Stewart, I believe, is her name. She may have graduated from law school by now. I'm not sure. That was a couple of years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, she was so inspirational. She spoke about how important high school had been to her, how wonderful her high school experience was, and how meaningful it was to her that her fellow community members cared enough to invest in her future. And it was really important for her to come back and thank us for giving her a hand up, and to encourage the younger people coming up now that they have the same opportunities open to them.
Do you find that the alumni become donors?
We often do. We don't necessarily know that they were alumni. They don't. Oh, this lovely woman from the class of 1950 mentioned that she was. Others don't necessarily say. I'm quite sure there are plenty. And in this community, so many people come back to live here after they've gone away to school.
If they can afford to.
That's right. And yes, in that case, I would expect that many alumni are donating.
Do you know if there are comparable programs in other high schools in Westchester?
I believe there are, but I don't know of them by name, so I wouldn't want to get involved. I know that I'm sure Edgemont has some sort of program, but I don't know exactly what it is.
Do you have any way of keeping track of students and what they go on to do?
We are not at the point where we've been involved in tracking students.
No Facebook page?
Oh, we have a Facebook page
Oh,
for
okay.
sure.
I
Oh,
mean,
definitely. But not everybody necessarily goes on to sign up to be a friend of the Facebook page.
I just hear of so many people who reunite with other students from their classes and high schools and colleges through Facebook. People
Yes.
find each other. And I wondered if there was any kind of community of award recipients.
There isn't, as far as I know. Facebook is still relatively new. I mean, for our kids, it seems like it's been around
I
forever.
think they're looking for the next new
right,
thing, right?
But exactly. I read today something like that it's going to be obsolete in a few years. The kids will be on to something else, and
I'm
it'll
not
just
so
be us
sure.
old people on
Yeah,
Facebook.
well, once they know their mom's on Facebook, it's
right,
not
it's sort
so
of,
much fun.
yeah, it kind of takes the fun out of it.
But I just wondered I mean, it's just using technology in a useful
Yes.
way. I just wondered if recipients feel any community or any sense of allegiance either to the school or to other students who received the awards whether they developed any sort of sorority or
Yeah,
fraternity.
of course. I can't say that there's anything formalized that I know of, but I do know anecdotally, just from having students go through Mamaroneck High School, there's a huge allegiance to the high school in general. And I think that flows into Mamaroneck Student Aid Fund recipients as well, being so proud of where they came from, and feeling a lot of loyalty to the school and staying in touch, but not specifically through the Student Aid Fund.
Okay, I just wondered if people sort of, just started to unite
Yeah.
and feel that they had, it's like anybody who's been through any kind of drama. Or
Absolutely.
any kind of
I think, though, in general, most students feel I was a member of the class of 2013,
Right.
not I was a Student Aid Fund recipient from 2013. This is my core group.
Okay.
They're thinking more in terms of their larger class.
Okay. How do the students find out about the aid fund?
We go to great lengths to be sure that guidance counselors throughout the high school have made it clear that we exist, and they do a wonderful job of doing that. Every guidance counselor meets with every student, junior and senior, in terms of talking about college and the future, and they all make sure that students are aware of not only the Student Aid Fund at Mamaroneck High School, but plenty of other scholarships that are out there as well. And Mamaroneck High School is so fortunate to have a dedicated specialist in this area, to have Marcia Burkett, who is the financial aid advisor and works very closely with the guidance department and is also really our link, our primary link to the school, and we could never do our job without her. She is an expert. She knows every student who has applied for a Student Aid Fund scholarship. She's invaluable.
Do you find that students who are motivated toward college, and I would say the largest percentage of graduates at Mamaroneck High School probably are,
Yes.
Seek out help when they need it? Or I guess what I'm getting at, are there some students who are feeling we're so overwhelmed, and I think you hit it on the nail before, there are people who are parents are out of work,
Right.
or employed at a much lower level than they might have been some time ago, and multiple kids, the costs are very great. Are there students that you need to capture who are saying, I'll put off college, or I'm just not going to do it because it's just way too much of a burden for my family?
If there are, that's not where we come in. That really begins with the guidance counselor and with Marcia. So I think you have a really good point, and I think it's quite possible that that does happen. But hopefully the guidance department has spoken enough to the student as well as his family. They bring in families as well and discuss the whole financial picture with students' families as well. Hopefully they've been able to, reassure the family that this is doable. And then they do come to us as a result of that.
I just wonder, I've not talked with guidance counselors lately, but I wonder, these are extraordinary economic times, and there probably are families who are struggling who never would have been expected to struggle.
Right, absolutely.
Before.
Yes, I think that it's important to realize that most of our recipients are what we would call regular members of the community. They're the people you see every day. They're not necessarily extraordinary stories. We do have extraordinary stories. We have students who have been liberated from their parents. We had one student 1 year who had been taken away from her mother, was living with a relative in another county, I believe it was Putnam, and so that she can continue specifically at Mamaroneck High School, got up to get on a 5 a.m. bus to get to Mamaroneck High School every day. So we have the extraordinary stories. But by far the most common are your next door neighbor. Somebody who, as you say, someone has just lost a job, someone's had an overwhelming medical expense come into his or her family and hasn't, is trying to pay off those bills. College is extremely expensive, and an upper middle class income sometimes isn't even enough.
Well, thank you so much for all you're doing. I've learned a lot about the Aid Fund, and I hope our community has as well. I want to remind everyone that April 30th is the last day for a matching fund. Don't let that stop you. If you can't give a donation by April 30th, you can still give a donation, but your donation will be matched if you make it by April 30th of 2013. Alice, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I hugely appreciate the opportunity to be able to bring to light the Mamaroneck Student Aid Fund.
It's been my pleasure, and I have certainly learned a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Alice Bloom. This is A Town and Village Too. We'll see you next time.